Hello, I'm Renée Valentina, and this is Musing Interruptus. Musing Interruptus is a podcast for sharing thoughts and stories and enjoying idiomatic phrases. You can read along. Just click on Continue Reading in the description to open a Google Doc with a transcription of this episode. The idiomatic expressions are in italics. Try to get the meaning from the context, and then look them up to see if you were right. If you like it, subscribe, follow, and share. But more importantly, continue the conversation. Drop a comment with your answers to today's questions. I'm really interested. The background music is by Blue Dot. Are you feeling lightheaded? Does your heart skip a beat when you think about a certain someone? Are your days invaded by thoughts of caressing their hands, feeling them press their lips against yours, and falling into a life together? Does your pinche hoo-ha hurt every time you think of that person? You think you have a little crush, don't you? 'Tis a season. However, the internet machine is telling me we should be worried about these seemingly harmless and natural processes. Stay with me now, because this one might sting. You just might be suffering from limerence, a state that, if understood, should be a logical antidote to all things unrequited. As many things that I really love, this is coming to us from the 70s. It's not just punk and older gentlemen that rock. It is a concept called limerence, and Dorothy Tennov, an experimental psychologist, wrote the book on it in 1979. It's called Love and Limerence. The lack of information on the matter of love and psychology inspired her. Her research turned up information that was vague and sometimes contradictory. She found descriptions of love that included, page 5, an emotion, an attitude, a sentiment, a personality type, a neurotic manifestation, a way of looking at the world, a means of emotional manipulation, a sublime passion, a peak experience, a weakness of the will, an obsession, an aesthetic reaction, a sacred state, a universal thirst, a glimpse of heaven, and according to Freud, a blocked sex urge. Yet none covered the experiences her students described as ache, an obsession, an unhappy love, in her words. The experience of unrequited love is something we seldom discuss publicly. If it doesn't resolve itself in a sexual encounter or at least marriage, then there is no happy ending. And that is not a great selling point. Apparently not even for experimental psychologists. Enter the fantastic psychedelic 1970s, and Tennov's research would lead her to call this the state of limerence. I like the description she makes of the need to make a distinction between the act of loving, as in caring, and being in love. It is a difference between an act and a state. She cites Rougemont to explain that an act is chosen. It is not merely endeared, page 15. She explains on page 16, the person who is not limerent toward you may feel great affection and concern for you, even tenderness, and possibly sexual desire as well. A relationship that includes no limerence may be a far more important one in your life, when all is said and done, than any relationship in which you experienced the strivings of limerent passion. But when limerence is in full force, it eclipses other relationships. Tennov goes on to explain on page 18 that limerence is a mental activity. It is an interpretation of events rather than the events themselves. You admire, you are physically attracted, you see or think you see, or deem it possible to see under suitable conditions. The hint of possible, reciprocity, and the process is set in motion. What Tennov describes as the beginning of the end. If what happens is you start to read between the lines and think you understand what is actually being said, meaning you aren't paying attention to the actual words or facts. And what I mean to say is you misinterpret actions, phrases, and silences, believing that what you feel is felt by the other person, the object of your affection, the person who you think, the operative word is think, has taken you to the state of limerence. Limerence is a confirmation that it was all in your head. Does that make limerence the symptom of an imaginary friend? Aren't we a bit old for that? What a mess. I hate messes. The realization that you are in a state of limerence is in itself reason enough to buy time with your psychoanalyst or psychotherapist. I know I have done my time throughout the years. It is the time best invested, especially this time of year. The time of expectations and chocolates and flowers and sex and romance, all fueled by an industry that has seen chocolate prices jacked up because cocoa beans were 100% more expensive to harvest in 2024. That is what AI said, and I've decided not to challenge it. It might be right. I'll leave you to do the fact-checking on that one. CNN says chocolate prices increased between 10 and 20%. The cost of manufacturing increased 167% in the last 2 years. Whatever the case, expectations of a sweet and orgasmic Valentine's Day may all be in your head as well, unless you procure it for yourself. On Musing Interruptus, we're all for that. It's called adulting. Another important part of adulting is being assertive and asking your would-be special someone if they have any feelings for you. That is a hard conversation, and sad when your feelings aren't reciprocated or you don't get an answer at all. In both cases, you have the certainty that it's time to move on. In my humble opinion, having that conversation outside your mind with the real version of the person is much, much better. Knowing is always better. That is the antidote to limerence, at least from my very uneducated point of view. It is also a way of procuring self-love. You deserve to be in a relationship with someone who loves you back, starting with yourself. Happy Valentine's Day. Thank you for listening. Some people never experience romantic love or limerence. Can you believe that? If that is your case, what tips you off to wanting to be with someone as more than friends? If you have experienced limerence, what was your last experience like? Do you agree with Penov that limerence eclipses other relationships? Why? I'm listening.